Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how are you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. We are midway through Hanukkah. We've got Christmas around the corner. It is a great time of year.
Yep. And 4 years ago, this past Saturday, I became a grandfather. So we had one fun birthday party for my little granddaughter, Cora, down at the carousel in Stamford with 20 friends and so on and so forth. So it's a great season. What can I say?
Yes, it is. And we're hoping that this season continues and we have a great new year as we head into 2024 shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. And heading into 2024, obviously it's a great time to this time of year to give back in so many ways. So if you're looking for different ways to give back, now is the time of year to start that. Make that a New Year's resolution. And we have a wonderful, wonderful guest that absolutely lives that every day of his life. Tim Healy's been a good friend of mine from St. Anne's. He's a deacon over there, and I've known him for several years. And besides his wonderful homilies, he gives back in so many ways. He is the commander of the Avon, Connecticut VFW post, and he's also a veteran himself. And they took it upon themselves as a VFW to take on a project it's a project that they have a template for, but it's to bring over a refugee family from Afghanistan whose principal was an informant to help out the soldiers while they were there. And as a result of that, since we left, they live in grave danger. So that's what the program is all about. But Tim, tell us about yourself. There's so many wonderful things that you do, and obviously we like to talk about that and see if we can publicize that for you too. But take it away, Tim. Preach to us.
Okay, well, you did a pretty good job there, Chip, of letting people know who I am. Yes, indeed, the commander of the Avon VFW Post 3272, and the guys served as commander for a couple of years, and everybody has their different take on what they want to do for the post. And my little strategy that I sent out to the guys was make sure we're on a sound financial basis, and we wanted to increase our membership and then do some interesting things with community service. So as it turns out, the increase in the membership and doing the community service found a joint target in helping to resettle an Afghan family. And I spoke to some Afghan vets who were in the neighborhood here and some of their friends, and they all thought it was a wonderful idea, especially if you've been reading the paper. Afghan veterans are having a tough time right now. There was just an article in today's BBC about some Afghans who had worked with the UK Special Forces, and they were denied asylum in the UK. And the military people in the UK went ballistic with that, and they said, "How can you be so? How can you be so? Whatever." They say
The
things.
callous.
Yeah, how they say things differently in the UK. But anyway, the in the United States, we've been much more open to bringing people who helped U.S. and coalition forces over here. And we're working with a group called IRIS. IRIS is the Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services Organization, and they are based both in New Haven and in Hartford. And the gentlemen who run both of those offices, Dodd and Hayward, are both SIV, Special Immigration Visa Afghan people who have actually helped U.S. and coalition forces over in Afghanistan. So they know whereof they speak. But anyway, we're looking for an Afghan family with that SIV visa so we can attract younger Afghan vets and have them write the happy ending to a story in Afghanistan, which in and of itself does not really have a particularly happy ending. And that's not really the topic of this conversation, but boy, could I go on about that for a while. Anyway, the idea is to have the younger Afghan and Iraqi vets to be able to write the happy ending to their engagement with that part of history, and in the process also grow the organization and take care of their own interests going forward. Because veterans do need to be representative. You can represent yourself but it's much better to be represented through an organization, much more political clout when you do something like that. So it's a good idea to have a VFW around if you have to have a substantial population of veterans in the community, which, as it turns out, we do. Now, let's see, what else?
We'll get to talking about the folks you're trying to bring over from Afghanistan in a moment, but I want to touch on something you just said about how the Afghan vets are having difficult times. What kind of difficulties are they going through right now?
Well, the instance I mentioned was just in today's BBC reportage, and it's they were simply denied asylum in the UK. And there's no good reason for them to have been denied, at least according to the military people for whom they worked. So that whole thing will sort itself out. There are a couple of ways to become to achieve refugee status and get a refugee visa in the U.S. And the one we're looking at is what they call a special immigration visa, and that's specifically for people who helped U.S. and coalition forces in Afghanistan. There were two other ways which we've told the Irish people we're cognizant of, as a military or organization of military veterans. We have a specific focus, and we would like their assistance in resettling an Afghan family with that special immigration visa status, because they help military people just like us. Most of us in the VFW right now are Vietnam vets. The World War II folks are literally dying out, although we do have a 104-year-old guy who was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he's probably in better shape than most of the rest of us. But anyway, when we came back from Vietnam, our experience returning from Vietnam, if you're of an age, you might remember that Vietnam vets did not get a particularly welcoming, open arm welcome when they returned from Vietnam. As a matter of fact, we were looked down upon as baby killers and other appropriate terms to us. So we're kind of conscious of what happens when you're perhaps on the wrong end of history. You have a hard time getting people to help you. So we are particularly sensitive to the plight of our Afghan allies and what they have to go through. You might also have read that Pakistan just told all the Afghans who had gone there to escape the Taliban to leave. The question is, where do you go? And that's a difficult question to answer, especially if you don't have much by way of resources. So they're in between a rock and a hard place right now.
Yeah, you had mentioned you wanted to help the Afghan veterans write their happy ending. Now, I'm referring primarily to the U.S. soldiers in this case. What are they going through? Are they suffering a similar fate to what the Vietnam vets did, or do they have different difficulties? What's their situation?
Well, I'd say we all have difficulties. Anybody, and no matter whether you're on the winning side or the losing side, you're going to experience things that no human being should really ever have to experience. And there you are. So it's good to be together in a band of brothers where you can talk about these things, and you get your professional help, but also have your informal help, just being around people who are similar to you. Most of the Afghan vets I know, the younger fellows, the combat vets and the MPs and such, are doing okay. They have their family structures to support them and so on. But if you engage them in conversation, they get this blank stare on the face of, what was that whole thing about? We spent 20 years and billions of dollars to do what? What was I part of? What was the focus? What was the mission? And it was never entirely clear to them. And now, looking at the unceremonious departure from Afghanistan, that left billions of dollars worth of equipment on the ground and hundreds of thousands of people in a precarious situation. They're really questioning, did we do the right thing there? And there's a moral overhang there. In the when you look at veterans and the different mental difficulties they can go through, there's certainly PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is one thing. There's also another phenomenon called moral injury, where you've been asked to do something you know is wrong, like wrecking things and killing people. And then there's a third level, which is just recently being explored by the VA and other people. It's called soul injury. And soul injury says, why am I even around? Why is there a Chip? Why is there an Eric? Why is there a Tim? Well, what business do I have being around here using up resources? So it's a deep sense of self-doubt, and it's a place you want to move folks away from as quickly as possible. Plus, the Afghans we're helping have their own sets of issues. Most of them have experienced trauma of a nature that the rest of us will never experience, I hope. And what they experience is a lack of agency and a lack of sense of safety. So high in the order of priority for them is to give them a sense of safety and some sense of agency. And on our own veterans standpoint, give them an opportunity to work directly with an Afghan family and do the American thing with that family. And the American thing is to treat them with love, respect, give them a hand up, and welcome them as brothers and fellow citizens, and see that they can get life to the full. You know, Chip mentioned that I'm a deacon in our church, and it's rather an interesting position to be in, to be the commander of VFW and a deacon as well. Yeah, there's the religious message, which is all about love. That's what our religion is about, anyway. The whole thing, and on the military perspective is we have a mission to accomplish, and the priorities, as any commander would ever tell you, is my mission, my men, and myself. So I have those two missions kind of melded together in this project that we've undertaken. It's all about love, but it's also the mission, the men, including the Afghanistan family that we want to help. And the very end of it, and all the way down at the bottom, is taking care of myself. Because at some level, it is redemptive, even for me, to do this. Does that make any sense?
It does.
Yeah, I mean, when you first brought this up, actually, it was my wife Nancy that heard first thing about that. And as you hear what Tim Healy is doing with this, and it was amazing. And I know that you had a flyer and talked about it after church before, and you've been working on this for a couple of months to put together an application to get them a family over here. And I know that the major needs for them once they get here, you said number one was housing. Number two was employment, getting a job. And then number three was raising funds to pay for them when they got over here. And I know that you're doing good on number three. And I know you're making progress on the other two. And, you know, that's where I said, I got to introduce you to Eric and start introducing you to resources and so on. But can you tell us how you're doing with that and what you are still, you know, looking to accomplish there? And I know that you're, when we last talked, you were looking to get an application together to hopefully get a family over here sometime early next year.
You're a great straight man, Chip. I got to say, Eric, you should hire this guy. Anyway, the news is all good. We have located a place for him to stay. Actually, that happened last Thursday. Between the time when we first spoke, Eric, and now, it turns out that one of our VFW guys is in the Rotary, and he has friends in West Hartford and in Avon, and one of the fellows owned a house that his mom had been in, and she passed away a while ago, and he and his wife had been renting it out. And he said, "Oh boy, if I'd known, I just signed a lease with another family, and you know, it's going to be a year or so, so we don't really have anything available for you." Well, that family that rented the house decided they want to move out at the end of January. The guy called us up and said, "The house is available." He wants to let us use this house. Now, there's a role reversal for you. Instead of having to go and beg for people to understand, no, we don't really know how big the family is, blah, 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 blah. No, this guy just said, "I want you to use the house." So yes, we're going to pay rent and so on and so forth. And there's ways to accomplish that. And we have been rather successful with our fundraising, so that shouldn't be an issue. But the housing problem, Chip, is solved.
Yeah.
As of right now, with 90% assurance. The guy still had to talk to his wife, and I think the three of us kind of know how that goes sometimes. So anyway, the idea there is they should be able to move in, and you know where the place is? It's 2 blocks from Bishop's Corners.
Wow.
And housing criteria has to be someplace close to shopping, close to schools, close to public transportation, within walking distance of everything, because they don't have a car and they won't for probably the better part of 2 years. And this thing is 2 block walk. Gosh, let's get go.
Yep.
And even employment, all the other things come into focus. We'd ask people who are doing ESL, go look at the programs in the area. Well, there's one in Hartford, there's one in Torrington, there's one in West Hartford, there's one in New Britain. Well, which one should we look at? Well, look at them all. Well, no, you can't really tell people that. But now what we can tell them is look in West Hartford. And as it turns out, West Hartford has excellent programs for refugee populations. And actually, there's a really neat little Afghan restaurant on LaSalle Street. Guys that want to go there and get a kebab.
Yep.
And that's
No.
actually the first things we have to do for the family is get them a warm meal. So
Yeah.
that shouldn't be much. We could walk it from there.
That's so fantastic. I mean, as you know, I grew up near Bishop's Corner. I mean, that's where I moved.
I didn't know that, Chip. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I grew up right between Northwest and Hall on Drury Lane, right near Eisenhower Park. So I'm very familiar with the area there.
okay. Well, it's not too far from where these folks will hopefully end up.
Yeah, and I know that another concern of yours is when you find out about the family, you don't know how big or small they are, and it sounds like where they're moving in, that part of the problem is going to be covered because obviously, if it's a bigger family, that would have been a problem if it was a smaller place. So that's just wonderful. Obviously, being in the West Hartford community for employment, I definitely want you to keep me on top of that too. So.
Yeah. So thank you. I was working with Jonah Ruser, and he was very, very helpful, very forthcoming. He was working for William Ravice, and he, as you know, and he was very helpful and forthcoming. And he started to do a fair amount of legwork, but then this opportunity just kind of presented itself. So, being as good as he is, he just said, fine. If you find any other way I can be helpful, let me know.
Yep.
So, what's really great to see, Chip and Eric, is just the responsiveness of our community in getting this job done and helping out with the project. It is absolutely mind-bogglingly edifying to watch people step up to the plate and take on the responsibility to see this thing through, and cheerfully so. Nobody's doing it begrudgingly. And they're very imaginative too. I'll tell you this. Dennis Marolda, as a former military musician, is now was with the National Guard. I think he's retired now, but he runs or he's part of a swing and jazz band. They're going to be putting on a fundraiser for us in the Avon Senior Center on January 21st from 2 to 4. Just 2 hours of big band music. So anybody who wants to go there, throw in a couple bucks in the kitty if you feel like it. More or less, it's really just a way to get the community together and let them know what we're doing. But hopefully we'll raise some bucks doing that. And people have said to me, well, give me the pamphlet. I'll tell people. Okay. So people are stepping up to the bar in amazing ways. I'm so proud of the people in our community. They're just such a wonderful bunch of folks.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, you don't know the family that you're going to be helping.
Nope.
In general, the folks that go into these programs, what kind of things did they do with our troops to assist?
They did a variety of things, Eric. They largely served as interpreters. Some of them went out on military missions. They were under fire with our guys. We have some members of the post infantrymen who actually had nothing but good things to say about the interpreters who were with them. As not only could they interpret the language, but they kind of knew the lay of the land and where the good guys were and the bad guys were. It's kind of like the Vietnam vet guys. They were Kit Carson scouts, and they would kind of keep you out of trouble. And those are the kind of people you want definitely working on your side. But we had interpreters. We have people who worked in Kabul as IT people. One of the folks working with is Nassim Sheikh, who's down at the Farmington Valley Muslim American Center on 167 in Amman. Wonderful guy, helping us with interpretation and understanding cultural differences and pretty much anything that we need help with. And he has done this before. He at one point in time got a fellow with a IT background, spoke English. Boom, he had a job, no problem. He was integrated almost immediately. And the next guy he got was a truck driver, and it took him 2 years to get his CDL, his commercial driver's license, from the DMV. However, I must say that working through Iris worked with the DMV to have driver's ed materials made available in Pashto and Dari, which are the two main languages Afghan people speak. And to their credit, the DMV people not only did that, but they had a one-day special on kind of thing where all the Afghans came in, they took their test and so on. Now they still have to be able to read English to know what a stop sign means and where to get off and so on. But they did a yeoman effort and attempting to get these people to where they needed to get in their careers. And it's all over the lot, but interpreters, workers of one sort or another, office workers, people working in the bureaucracy, and people working in the field. So it's you can't say there's one specific kind of Afghan vet we're looking for. And if you look at any of the pictures of the people who were coming out of Afghanistan, they were packed into the C-17s. I was looking at one picture the other day. It was C-17 is supposed to hold 150 people. This one had 600 in it. It was just packed with folks. And if you're a pilot, you know how difficult that is, trying to balance the plane while you're flying. Anyway, it's a big deal, but the U.S. did a really good job trying to get as many people from all different walks of life as they could. The saddest part is a lot of people had to leave their pets behind. I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a dog or a cat, that's got to tear at your heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah. So we've got these Afghan families. Now, I just want to make this very clear for our listeners that these folks don't necessarily speak English. They are coming to a country that they don't know. They are going into an area that they are not familiar with. They don't know what's waiting for them. But they are in such danger where they are that none of that matters to them. They need to get out.
Yes, if you've been reading the papers, 800 of them have been killed since 2022. And you can hide, well, Joe Louis, the famous boxer, used to say, in the boxing ring, you can hide, but you can't run away. And it's that way very much in Afghanistan. People have a way of finding out who you are. So, oh, weren't you the one who, that kind of thing. So it's hard for them to do that. And it isn't as if you can walk down to the local Taliban office and ask for a passport to get out. Oh, where do you want to go? I think I'll go to the United States. Really? Why do you want to go there? It's not easy for them right now. I have a daughter who works for the State Department, and she mentioned that there's still a State Department presence in Afghanistan, but it's a very touchy kind of thing to try and get these folks out of there into what they call a lily pad country. It used to be something like Pakistan, with a place where they could go while they're en route someplace else. But there are other places they can go. Abu Dhabi and other such places have opened their gates for these folks. Yeah, it's a tough place to be right now if you're Afghanistan.
It is, and it's great that folks like you, like the folks at the VFW, are stepping up, and you're finding more people to step up to really help out. As we said at the beginning, this is the season of giving, and what could be more appropriate than giving folks a home and safety?
And in the original press release you put out, I don't know that Chip shared that with you. I mentioned there's a Jewish phrase, tikkun olam, which means to repair the world, tikkun olam. And when I posed the possibility of doing this to the Post, because you don't do anything without everybody agreeing, it was unanimous. This is something we have to do. We have a moral obligation to help these people because, hey, they helped us. Why do you think that you don't have a moral obligation to help these folks? And yes, they're going to come over here. They're quite traumatized. They may or may not know much by way of English. However, I mentioned earlier, love is spoken around the world, and people can tell very quickly whether you're for them or against them. And the people I asked to help out, and the people who volunteered to help, are full of that kind of love. They want nothing other than to make these people feel welcome, cherished, respected, and thanked. We owe them at this point in time. One of the things I did early on, since I had absolutely no idea how to go about this, was to try and get in touch with people who did know. And I got in touch with some folks, Mike and Sames up in Simsbury at the Methodist Church. They worked together with Muslim folks and a Jewish synagogue in Newington, and they hosted a Syrian family actually, and I got to meet them. And I got to tell you, Chip and Eric, you want to talk about some grateful people? You haven't seen gratitude until you've seen someone whose life has been clutched in the jaws of death. And this is a fairly large family, but just the kindest, sweetest, most grateful, loving family you could imagine. There they were, and looking around the room at the people who had helped them on that team, there was nothing but grins on people's faces. And Sue and Mike told me, said, "Yeah, there are a few things you do in life that are going to be as rewarding as helping people in situations like this." Now, the good news too, in Connecticut, the Irish people told me there are 40 groups like us. So it's just not a one-off VFW special. Some guy had a bright idea. No, there's hundreds of people around our state who are doing what we're doing. I've spoken with whole bunches of people, and Rafkin, who lives in West Hartford, has done a number of these things. Barb Davis at Iris has been very, very helpful in guiding us in the right path to get ourselves positioned to be able to help these folks. And of course, Nassim and his family and Avon, understanding the cultural differences and helping with interpretation and so on. And these are all just amazing, amazing people who have the good of others in their heart. And hey guys, that's the definition of love, putting someone else's interest ahead of your own. And we're surrounded by folks like that. It's not a one-off. The real world is not like what you see in the newspaper. Sorry, it ain't.
That's fantastic. And we are coming up on the end of our time. So before we wrap up, if any of our listeners wants to get involved in this and help out, how can they do so?
Well, they can certainly get in touch with me. Post Commander at Avon VFW Post 3272, Post Office Box 297, Avon, Connecticut 06001. You can do that. You can go to GoFundMe. On the GoFundMe site, there's an Afghan VFW Afghan Resettlement Project. Just type in Afghan Resettlement VFW, and our project will come right up. You see Avon VFW Post 3272, and there's a big picture of all of us standing there. It came from the Memorial Day Parade. Well, there we all are, and that's who we are. And you can make a contribution there if you wish, or you can send a check if you want. Or, hey, Eric, they can get in touch with you. You know how to get in touch with me.
Yes, they can.
Do whatever they would like to do. One thing I'll tell you right now, since we have a house and the thing is furnished, we don't need furniture at this point in time. We have enough people who already volunteer to do furniture and that sort of thing, and the place is fully furnished anyway. So if you have a giant 36 by 36 foot rug, then maybe we'll take that. But it's no. Seriously, we're happy to hear from anybody, even if it's just to say hi, good luck. That works for us.
All right. Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway this week?
Well, we talked about the word love, and I don't care what religion or anything else you come from. That's where we all come from, is love. And Tim forwarded me a link to a video that kind of showed how this whole thing got going. And you talk about the differences and so on and so forth. And right when the war was going on there, it showed how the relationships developed between our soldiers and the people who came over here. And one of the stories is about how one of the families came over here and the camaraderie. He talked about the experience that the people who are hosting people had, and that is on the video. It's just amazing. And I hope there's a link to that there. But the bottom line is, I mentioned this a lot in my talks, is if everybody could just close their eyes and walk around blind for a day, but just live normally, where you don't see what people look like, you don't see what their ethnicity is, you don't see what they stand for, you realize that we are all one. And that's the most important thing. At this time of year, people are always asking, okay, how can we help? But they don't know how. Awareness is obviously the biggest challenge for your mission and for other missions out there. And the more that we can help with awareness, and for those of you folks out there listening, share this with other people out there so that they know what's going on. Let's spread it. The bottom line is positivity is a lot more powerful than any virus out there. And you folks can do that just by talking it up.
This, just to use a Christian metaphor here, we talk about the gifts of the Magi. Remember the three wise guys or three wise men who showed up?
Yeah.
Well, everybody has three gifts that they can always give. And it doesn't have to be Christmas or Hanukkah or the Ramadan or Diwali. You can give it anytime you want. And those three gifts are love, thanks, and forgiveness. They're always in fashion. They never get old. They're always welcome. And they're yours to give as freely as you choose to give. And there's a saying, I think, is a tribute to St. Peter Chrysologus, and there's some others. It says, you will not be allowed to keep what you do not give away. So,
Yeah.
works for love, works for thanks, and works for forgiveness.
Yeah, that's such an important message. And I think that really is the big takeaway for today. We're inundated with what's going on around the world and people spouting all sorts of hate. Well, this is people coming together to help people who need it, who have shown they were willing to lay down their lives and put themselves in danger for others. And now they've been, left in danger. And these folks are coming together to get them out of that danger, to give them the safety of a home, to give them what they need, not just to survive, but to thrive. And
Yep.
I
The
think
truth be
that's
told,
just
the
so
truth be told,
important.
Eric, there's a lot more of us than there are of them.
And that's what we have to remember.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, including the brand new Apple channel, Xvadio Podcast Network. The channel is now available on the Apple Podcasts app. We're also on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.